Part 1. The Silent Centuries. The morning started like any other morning on the edge of human space. Commander Jake Holland sat in his captain's chair aboard the UHS Defender, drinking coffee that tasted like recycled water. Because it was recycled water, everything was recycled out here at the border. For 3,000 years, humanity had lived behind an invisible wall called the Sol Barrier. It was part of a treaty signed after the worst war anyone could remember. On one side lived humans. On the other side lived the Velkari and 100 other alien species. Nobody crossed the line. Nobody broke the peace. Jake had been stationed here for 15 years. He watched the empty space between the stars and never saw anything interesting. His crew was small. Lisa Murphy handled weapons and tactics. Kevin Brooks kept the engines running. Dr. Peter Zhao studied whatever science stuff needed studying. They were good people, but they were bored people. The treaty existed because humans and aliens had nearly killed each other off 3,000 years ago. Back then, humans were new to space travel. They built colony ships and sent them to distant stars. One ship, the Mayflower II, carried 50,000 sleeping colonists. The Velkari found it and destroyed it. Every person aboard died. When humans found out something broke inside their civilization, they stopped being explorers. They became something else, something angry, something dangerous. The war lasted 20 years. Humans lost billions of people. The Velkari, who had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years, lost even more. They had never fought anyone like humans before. Other species surrendered when they lost battles. Humans just got angrier. They fought harder. They never gave up even when they were losing. The Velkari were terrified. They had superior technology, bigger ships, and more soldiers. But humans fought like every battle was personal, because to them it was finally. Both sides were exhausted. The Velkari Empress met with Earth's top military leader. They drew a line in space. Humans would stay on their side. Aliens would stay on theirs. For 3,000 years, everyone honored that agreement, until today. Lisa Murphy was running a routine scan when her screen lit up with warnings. She sat up straight in her chair. "Commander, I'm detecting ships. 6 contacts. They're crossing the barrier." Jake set down his coffee. "What kind of ships?" "Velkari warships, sir." "Heavy cruisers, armed and shields up." The bridge went silent. Kevin stopped typing on his console. Peter turned from his science station. Everyone stared at the main screen. Jake opened a communication channel. "This is Commander Jake Holland of the UHS Defender. You are violating the Treaty of Proxima. Explain your presence immediately." No response. The 6 ships kept moving. They were heading straight for New Terra, a human colony world. 12 million people lived there. Families, children, people who had never known war. "They're not responding, sir," Lisa said. Her voice was tight. "Target locks detected. Their weapons are hot." Jake's hands gripped the armrests of his chair. "Sound battle stations. Send emergency signals to Earth Command and New Terra. Tell them the treaty is broken." Alarms blared through the ship. The crew moved to combat positions. The Defender was just one ship. The enemy had 6, but Jake didn't hesitate. "Take us in, Kevin, full speed." The ship jumped forward. Through the windows, Jake could see New Terra in the distance, a beautiful blue and green world. His daughter lived there. She was 7 years old. The Velkari ships reached New Terra first. Jake watched in horror as they opened fire. Bright lances of energy struck the orbital defense platforms. Explosions bloomed in the black space. Metal and fire scattered across the stars. "They're firing on civilians," Peter whispered. "Why would they do this?" Jake didn't answer. He was too busy giving orders. "Lisa, target the lead ship. Fire everything we have." The Defender was smaller than the enemy cruisers, but it was fast. Human ships had always been fast. Lisa locked weapons and fired. Railgun rounds tore through space at incredible speeds. Plasma torpedoes followed. The first Velkari ship's shields flared and held. But the Defender kept firing. Jake directed Kevin to circle around, hitting the enemy from different angles. It was an old tactic from the First War. "Keep moving! Never stay still. Make them chase you." The second Velkari ship turned to engage the Defender. Energy beams cut through space where Jake's ship had been seconds before. Kevin's piloting skills kept them alive. "Their shields are weakening," Lisa reported. She fired again. This time the rounds punched through. The Velkari ship's hull ruptured. Atmosphere vented into space. The ship went dark and began to drift, 1 down, 5 to go. But the other ships were still hammering New Terra. Jake could see the colony's shields failing. Below those shields were cities, parks, schools, his daughter's school. "Target the second ship," he ordered. The battle was chaos. The defender dodged and weaved between enemy fire. Lisa worked her weapons console like a concert pianist. Every shot had to count. They couldn't afford to waste ammunition. The second enemy ship exploded in a ball of fire. But Jake knew they were taking damage too. Warning lights flashed across every console. "Hull breaches on 3 decks. Shields at 30%. "Sir, the colony shields are down," Peter said quietly. Jake looked at the planet. He saw fire. New Terra's northern continent was burning. Cities were gone. Millions of people had just died. Something cold settled in Jake's chest. The same thing that had settled in humanity's chest 3,000 years ago. The Velkari had made a terrible mistake. They had reminded humans of something they thought they had forgotten. Kevin, ramming speed on Ship 3. "Sir?" Kevin's voice cracked. "You heard me." "Lisa, fire everything on my mark." The defender accelerated directly at the third Velkari ship. The enemy captain must have thought they were insane. Maybe they were. Lisa fired every weapon at once. The concentrated barrage overwhelmed the enemy shields just as the defender pulled up at the last second. The Velkari ship, shields down and hull exposed, took critical damage. It began to break apart. The remaining 3 ships suddenly broke off their attack. They jumped to faster-than-light speeds and vanished. Running away. Jake sat in his chair and stared at New Terra. Half the planet was covered in smoke. 3 million people were dead. His daughter's school was in the burn zone. Lisa was crying at her station. Kevin had his head in his hands. Peter just stared at the screen in shock. "Send the full report to Earth Command," Jake said. His voice sounded dead, even to himself. "Tell them the treaty is broken. Tell them New Terra has fallen. Tell them," he paused. Outside the window, the stars looked different somehow, colder, harder. "Tell them it's time to remind the galaxy who we are." The message went out at light speed. Within hours, every human in the Sol barrier would know. The 3,000-year peace was over. Someone had killed their people. And humanity never forgot how to answer that crime. The Velkari Empire had just made the worst decision in their 10,000-year history. They had gone to war with humans again. This time humans wouldn't stop at a treaty. The emergency signal from New Terra reached Earth in 6 hours. It traveled through quantum communication relays that connected every human world. By the time the sun rose over Geneva, everyone knew. President Claire Hoffman stood in the World Defense Council chamber. Around her sat military commanders from every nation. Generals, admirals, strategic planners, all of them wore the same expression. Grim determination mixed with barely controlled rage. Admiral Henry Cross was the oldest person in the room. He was 80 years old and had spent his entire life in the military. His grandfather had fought in the First War against the Velkari. The stories had been passed down through 3 generations. 3 million dead, Claire said. The words felt heavy in her mouth. 12 million more wounded or displaced. New Terra's infrastructure is destroyed. They're saying the northern continent will be uninhabitable for decades. The room stayed silent. Everyone had seen the footage. Burning cities. Destroyed homes. Children crying for parents who would never answer. Admiral Cross stood up slowly. His uniform was covered in medals from a lifetime of service. "Madam President, I request permission to activate Battle Protocol Omega." Claire looked at him. She knew what that meant. Everyone in the room knew. "Are we certain this is the right path?" "Once we start, there's no going back." "They made the choice for us," Cross said. "They broke a 3,000-year treaty. They murdered our people. If we don't respond with strength, every species in the galaxy will think we're weak. We'll see attacks on other colonies. More death. More destruction." A younger general spoke up. "What assets do we actually have? The public thinks our fleet is small. Defensive only. How can we fight the entire Velkari Empire?" Cross smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. "That's what they think. That's what we wanted them to think." He pressed a button on the table. A hologram appeared above them. It showed the solar system and beyond. Hundreds of red dots lit up. "For 3,000 years we prepared for this day," Cross explained. "We built shipyards inside asteroids. We hollowed out moons and turned them into military bases. We developed weapons and secret facilities. The treaty said we couldn't expand our territory. It never said we couldn't build up our defenses. The hologram zoomed in on different locations. Each red dot was a hidden military installation. Thousands of them. We have 2,000 warships ready right now. Cross continued. Another 5,000 can be battle-ready within a month. Our technology didn't stop advancing. While the galaxy thought we were peaceful farmers and merchants, our scientists were creating new weapons. Better weapons. Claire felt something stir in her chest. Pride mixed with sadness. Humanity had wanted peace. They had honored the treaty. But they had also remembered. They had never forgotten what happened when someone hurt them. Give the order, she said. Activate Battle Protocol Omega. Across human space, military bases came alive. Ships that had been hidden for generations powered up their engines. Soldiers who had trained for a war they thought would never come reported for duty. Weapons factories shifted to maximum production. Captain Nicole Grant was in deep space when she got the recall order. She commanded the UHS Vengeance, a heavy cruiser that patrolled the outer edges of human territory. Her crew was experienced and loyal. Ryan Pierce was her weapons officer. His family had lived on New Terra. When the attack happened, he lost his wife and 2 sons. He sat at his console with red eyes and shaking hands. Grief and rage fought inside him. Megan Lawson was the ship's pilot. She was considered the best combat flyer in the fleet. She could make a ship do things that seemed impossible. During training exercises, she had never lost a single engagement. All crew, this is Captain Grant, Nicole said over the ship's intercom. You've all heard about New Terra, you know what happened. Earth Command has activated Battle Protocol Omega. We're going to war. She paused. The ship was silent. She could feel the weight of the moment. The Valkyrie think we're soft. They think 3,000 years of peace made us forget how to fight. They're wrong. Every one of you trained for this. You know our history. You know what humanity is capable of when pushed. Now they're about to learn it too. Meanwhile, Ambassador Charles Wright tried to open diplomatic channels with the Valkyrie Empire. He sent messages demanding an explanation. For 3 days, there was no response. Then finally, a message came through. It showed a Valkyrie male on a throne. His scales were deep red and his eyes were yellow. He wore armor made from some kind of black metal. I am Emperor Korthax, the alien said. His voice was translated into English by computer. The treaty was signed by weak leaders who feared your primitive species. I do not share their fear. The galaxy's resources belong to the strong. Your territory contains rare minerals we require. We will take them. Charles felt his blood run cold. You attacked a civilian colony. You murdered millions of people. This is an act of war. Korthax laughed. It was a harsh grating sound. Your species has been isolated for 3 millennia. Your technology is outdated. Your warriors are untested. We will sweep through your space in months. Surrender now and we will allow some of you to live as servants. The transmission ended. Charles immediately sent the recording to President Hoffman and Admiral Cross. The Valkyrie Emperor had just declared total war. Cross watched the recording 3 times. Then he began giving orders. The fleet would mobilize in stages. First wave would secure the border systems. Second wave would push into the buffer zone. Third wave would prepare for deep strikes into Valkyrie space. They think we're weak, Cross said to his staff officers. They're about to learn the most important lesson in galactic history. Humanity can be peaceful. We can be kind. We can be generous. But when you hurt us, when you kill our people, we become something else entirely. He pulled up historical files on his computer. Battle records from the First War. Videos of human ships fighting against impossible odds. Reports of soldiers who refused to surrender even when surrounded. Stories of entire colonies that chose to fight to the last person rather than submit. Send this file to every ship captain, Cross ordered. I want them to remember what we're capable of. I want them to understand that we're not just defending our territory. We're teaching the galaxy a lesson that should have never been forgotten. Nicole Grant received the files aboard the Vengeance. She watched the old battle footage with her senior officers. They saw human ships smaller and weaker than the enemy, using speed and tactics to win. They saw soldiers fighting with a determination that bordered on insanity. Ryan Pierce watched a clip of a damaged human frigate ramming a Valkyrie battleship. Both ships were destroyed, but the human captain saved his colony. That's what we're going up against, Ryan said quietly. Not the Valkyrie ourselves. Can we match what our ancestors did? Megan looked at him. They fought for their families, for their homes. We're doing the same thing. Your family, Ryan. My brother lived on New Terra. He's gone now. We have every reason to fight just as hard, Nicole stood up. The difference is we have better ships, better weapons, better training, and we have something they don't have. We know exactly what happens when you push humanity too far. They're about to find out. Across the fleet, similar conversations happened on hundreds of ships. Soldiers checked their weapons. Pilots ran combat simulations. Engineers made sure every system was perfect. Everyone knew this war would define their generation. On Earth, the memorial where the old treaty was signed became a gathering place. Millions of people came to light candles for New Terra's dead. They sang old songs from the First War. They told stories of courage and sacrifice. They remembered who they were. Admiral Cross stood at his command post and looked at the fleet readiness reports. 2,000 ships ready, more coming online every day. It was the largest military force humanity had assembled since the First War. He sent one final message to all ship captains. It was simple and direct. They chose war. We offered peace and they spat on it. Now we remind them why their ancestors feared us. For New Terra, for humanity. Make them remember. The fleet began to move toward the border. War was coming, and this time humanity would not stop until justice was served. War Marshal Tekvon commanded the Velkari battle fleet from his flagship, the Crimson Fang. He was a decorated officer with 50 years of military experience. He had conquered 12 different species for the Empire. Humans would be number 13. Emperor Korthax had given him 50 warships and clear orders. Destroy the human mining colony at Sanctuary System. Show humanity that resistance was futile. Tekvon expected the mission to take a few hours at most. He had studied human tactics from the ancient war records. The files were 3,000 years old. Surely human strategy had not improved much since then. They were isolated, cut off from galactic advancement. Their ships would be outdated. Their weapons would be primitive. Tekvon was about to learn a hard lesson. Humans never stopped improving. They just did it quietly. The Sanctuary System had a small mining colony on its second planet. 300,000 people lived there, extracting rare minerals from the asteroid belt. It was an easy target, unimportant, perfect, for making a statement. What Tekvon didn't know was that Captain Nicole Grant and her battle group were waiting for him. Nicole had 30 ships under her command. They were hiding in the asteroid field, powered down and silent. The Vengeance and its sister ships waited like hunters in the dark. Enemy fleet detected, Megan Lawson reported from the pilot station. 50 contacts. Velkari heavy cruisers. They're heading straight for the colony. Nicole studied the tactical display. The Velkari were moving in their traditional formation. A tight group designed to concentrate firepower. It worked well against most species. Most species fought the same way the Velkari did. Stand and trade shots until one side broke. Humans had never fought that way. All ships, this is Captain Grant. Nicole transmitted on the secure channel. Remember your training. Fast and unpredictable. Hit them from multiple angles. Don't give them time to lock on. Make every shot count. Ryan Pierce checked his weapon systems. Every railgun was loaded. Every torpedo was armed. He thought about his wife's smile. His son's laughter. Gone forever because these aliens decided peace was weakness. Weapons ready, Captain, he said. His voice was steady, but his eyes were cold. The Velkari fleet entered the asteroid field. Tekvon expected the human colony to surrender immediately. Instead, his sensor officer gave him disturbing news. War Marshal, I'm detecting 30 human warships. They're spreading out around us. Moving fast, Tekvon frowned. 30 ships against 50. The humans were either brave or stupid. All vessels, open fire. Destroy them quickly. The Velkari ships began firing their energy weapons. Massive beams of concentrated power lanced through space. They hit asteroids and vaporized them. But the human ships weren't there anymore. Nicole's fleet scattered like leaves in the wind. Each ship went in a different direction, using the asteroids as cover. The Velkari weapons, designed for fleet battles against stationary targets, couldn't track the fast-moving human ships. Now, Nicole ordered. The Vengeance burst from behind a large asteroid at full speed. Megan's piloting was perfect. The ship twisted and turned through the debris field at speeds that should have been impossible. Ryan fired the railguns. The metal slugs traveled at a significant fraction of light speed. They punched through the Velkari shields like they weren't there. Human engineers had spent 3,000 years studying Velkari shield technology. They knew exactly where the weak points were. The first Velkari ship exploded. Then a second. Then a third. All around the battlefield, human ships were doing the same thing. Appear, fire, disappear. The Velkari tried to respond, but their formation was breaking apart. They weren't used to enemies who refused to fight fair. Tekvon watched in growing alarm as his fleet took damage. These humans fought nothing like the ancient records suggested. They were faster, more aggressive, more precise. All ships break formation. Pursue individual targets, he ordered. It was a mistake. The Velkari ships scattered, and now the humans picked them off one by one. Every time a Velkari captain thought he had a human ship cornered, 3 more would appear from different angles. Megan piloted the Vengeance through a gap between 2 enemy ships that was barely wider than the ship itself. Ryan fired at both targets as they passed. 2 more Velkari ships went dark. How are they doing this? Tekvon demanded. His flagship was taking hits. Shields were failing. His second officer pulled up the tactical data. Their ships are smaller but much faster. Their weapons are more accurate, and they're using the asteroids perfectly. It's like they've fought in this environment 1,000 times. They had. Every human pilot trained in asteroid fields. Every weapons officer practiced hitting moving targets in debris. They had 3,000 years to perfect their tactics. The battle lasted 3 hours. When it ended, 15 Valkyrie ships were destroyed. 20 more were badly damaged. Tekvon ordered a retreat, and the surviving ships jumped away at faster than light speed. Humanity lost 4 ships. It was a crushing victory. Nicole watched the enemy retreat on her screens. Then she opened a communication channel that would broadcast across all human and Velkari frequencies. "To the Velkari Empire," she said. Her voice was calm but hard. "You broke a peace we honored for 3,000 years. You murdered millions of our people. You thought we were weak because we chose peace. You were wrong. We are coming, and we will not stop until justice is served." The message was recorded and spread across the galaxy within hours. Other alien species watched it with shock. The mighty Valkyrie had been defeated. Badly defeated. On Earth, people watched the battle footage in the streets. Crowds cheered. Some cried with relief. New Terra was avenged, at least partially. But everyone knew this was just the beginning. Admiral Cross received Nicole's battle report. He read it 3 times, analyzing every detail. Then he called a meeting of his senior staff. Grant's tactics worked perfectly, he said. Speed over power. Precision over volume. We're going to standardize these methods across the fleet. Every captain needs to study this battle. He pulled up a map of the border region. Red marks showed Velkari territory. Blue marks showed human space. The buffer zone between them was empty. "We're not going to wait for them to attack again," Cross announced. "We're going to push forward. Secure the buffer zone. Make it impossible for them to threaten our colonies again." His officers agreed. More ships were arriving at the border every day. Within a week, they would have 500 vessels ready for offensive operations. Meanwhile, Emperor Korthax received Tekvon's report. The War Marshal had returned in shame, his fleet broken. Korthax was furious. "How can primitives defeat our warships?" he demanded. "You had 50 ships against 30. You outnumbered them." Tekvon bowed low. "Emperor, these humans are not what we expected. Their technology is advanced. Their tactics are superior. They fight with a determination I've never seen. I respectfully suggest we reconsider this war." Korthax struck him across the face. "Coward, I will not show weakness. Mobilize the main fleet. 2,000 ships. I will lead them personally. We will crush humanity once and for all." In the shadows of the throne room, older Velkari officials whispered among themselves. They remembered the stories their grandparents told. Stories of the First War. Stories of human ships that never retreated. Stories of human soldiers who fought until their last breath. The young emperor didn't understand what he was doing. He was waking a sleeping giant. He was challenging a species that had spent 3,000 years preparing for this exact moment. One old advisor approached the throne carefully. "Emperor, perhaps we should seek peace. Offer reparations for the colony we destroyed. The humans might accept." "Guns!" Korthax roared. "We do not negotiate with inferiors. We conquer them." The old advisor backed away. He had tried. Now all he could do was watch as his empire marched toward disaster. Across the galaxy, other species watched the situation develop. Some placed bets on how long humanity would last. Others quietly began moving their ships away from the conflict zone. The smart ones remembered their history. They knew what humans were capable of. Captain Nicole Grant stood on the bridge of the Vengeance. Her crew was repairing damage from the battle. They had fought well and won decisively, but she knew bigger battles were coming. Ryan Pierce approached her. "Captain, I want to thank you for letting me do this, for letting me fight back." Nicole looked at him. "Your family deserved better than what happened." "We all did. But we're going to make sure it never happens again. Every Valkyrie ship we destroy is one less threat to our people." "Do you think we can win this war?" Ryan asked. Nicole smiled. It was a warrior's smile. "We already are winning. They just don't realize it yet." The first battle of the Second War was over. Humanity had announced its return to the galactic stage. And the message was clear: push us and we push back harder. Emperor Korthak stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. Around him in space floated 2,000 Valkyrie warships. It was the largest fleet assembled since the First War 3,000 years ago. Nothing could stand against this much power. War Marshal Tekvon stood beside him, nervous. He had seen what human ships could do. He had lost ships to their tactics. But Korthax refused to listen to warnings. "With 2,000 ships, numbers alone will crush them," the Emperor declared. "Even if their technology is advanced, they cannot defeat this many vessels." The fleet was heading to Beta Centauri Junction, a strategic point where multiple jump lanes met. Control that location and you controlled access to a dozen star systems. Intelligence reports said Admiral Cross was bringing 800 human ships to defend it, 2,000 against 800. The math seemed simple. What the Valkyrie didn't know was that humans had prepared a surprise, something the galaxy had never seen before, something that would change warfare forever. Admiral Cross stood in his command center watching the tactical displays. His fleet was positioned around Beta Centauri's primary star, 800 ships against 2,000. Bad odds by traditional calculation. But Cross wasn't planning a traditional battle. "Status on the Helios array?" he asked his tactical officer. "All satellites in position, sir. Energy collectors fully charged." "We can fire on your command," Cross nodded. The Helios array was humanity's secret weapon. For 50 years, engineers had been placing satellites around the star. Each satellite could collect solar energy and redirect it. Individually, they were just collectors. Together, they became a weapon of terrifying power. Captain Nicole Grant's battle group was part of Cross's fleet. The Vengeance held position with the defensive line, waiting for the enemy. Ryan Pierce ran continuous weapons checks. Megan Lawson studied the approach vectors. Everyone was ready. "Enemy fleet detected," the sensor officer announced. 2,000 contacts. They're coming in fast." Nicole opened a channel to her crew. "This is it. The big one. We've trained for this. We've bled for this. New Terra watches us. Our families watch us. Make them proud." The Valkyrie fleet arrived in a massive formation. Ship after ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel. They filled the space around the junction like a metal storm. Korthax looked at his displays and smiled. The human fleet looked tiny compared to his armada. "All ships advance and destroy them," he commanded. The two fleets closed on each other. The Valkyrie moved in their traditional tight formation, designed to concentrate their firepower. Cross watched them come and waited for the perfect moment. The Valkyrie opened fire first. Thousands of energy beams lanced across space. Human shields flared under the assault. Several ships took damage, but the human fleet held formation. "Now," Cross said quietly. The Helios array activated. Around the star, satellites began to move. They formed a pattern, each one adjusting its position precisely. Then they fired. Concentrated beams of stellar energy burst from the satellites. Each beam contained the power of a small sun. They converged on the Valkyrie fleet like the fingers of an angry god. The first beam hit a Valkyrie battleship dead center. The ship's shields couldn't handle that much energy. They overloaded instantly. The hull vaporized. The ship simply ceased to exist. Then the second beam hit, and the third, and the fourth. The tightly packed Valkyrie formation became a death trap. Ships that were close together to concentrate their firepower now died together. The beams swept through the fleet like a scythe through wheat. "Break formation. Scatter!" Tekvon shouted into his communication system. But it was too late for many ships. Korthak stared at his screens in horror. He was watching hundreds of ships die in seconds. "What is this weapon? How do they have this power?" "It's their star, Emperor," his science officer reported. "They've weaponized the star itself." The Valkyrie fleet broke apart in chaos. Captains tried desperately to get away from the kill zone. Ships collided with each other in their panic. The perfect formation became a scattered mess, and that's when the human fleet struck. "All ships, attack pattern Delta," Admiral Cross ordered. "Target the scattered vessels. Don't give them time to regroup." Nicole's battle group surged forward. The Vengeance led a strike force of 20 ships directly toward the center of the Velkari chaos. Megan piloted through the confusion with deadly precision. Ryan fired continuously, his weapons never cooling down. Human ships tore through the disorganized enemy. The Velkari had superior numbers, but they had lost their coordination. Individual captains made individual decisions, and that made them vulnerable. Nicole identified the biggest ship on her screen. "The Eternal Dominion. The Emperor's flagship, that one," she said, pointing. "We take down their leader." Her strike force punched through the Velkari lines. 3 enemy ships tried to block them. Megan performed a maneuver that seemed to defy physics, spinning the Vengeance between 2 enemy vessels. Ryan fired at both as they passed. Both ships took critical damage. The Eternal Dominion was massive. Its shields were the strongest the Velkari had ever built. Its hull was reinforced with rare metals. It was designed to survive any battle, but human weapons had evolved too. Ryan activated their quantum warheads. These weapons didn't hit the shields. They phased through them, existing in a different dimension until they reached the target. Then they exploded with devastating force. The first warhead hit the flagship's starboard side. The explosion tore through 3 decks. The second hit near the engines. The third struck the command tower. Inside his throne room, Korthax felt his ship shaking apart. Alarms blared. Officers shouted conflicting reports. Fire spread through the corridors. "Emperor, we must evacuate," Tekfon urged. Korthax looked at his displays. His fleet was being destroyed. 2,000 ships reduced to scattered fragments. The humans had done this with only 800 vessels and a weapon he never imagined possible. "How?" he whispered. "How can they be this powerful?" Tekfon grabbed his arm. "Because we awakened them, Emperor. We reminded them of what they can do. We made the same mistake our ancestors almost made. We went to war with humanity. The Eternal Dominion's hull breached in 6 places. The ship was dying. Korthax realized, perhaps for the first time, that he was going to die too. He opened a communication channel. "All Velkari ships, this is Emperor Korthax. We surrender. Cease fire immediately. Please no more." Admiral Cross received the surrender. He looked at his casualty reports. 140 human ships destroyed or damaged, against 1,200 Velkari ships destroyed. It was a devastating, complete victory. "All human vessels cease fire," Cross ordered. Accept the surrender. The battle ended. Space was filled with debris from dead ships. The Velkari fleet, or what remained of it, powered down their weapons. Rescue shuttles began searching for survivors. Nicole sat in her captain's chair, breathing hard. Around her, the bridge crew was silent. They had won. They had actually won. Ryan Pierce stared at his console. His hands were shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. "We did it," he said quietly. "For New Terra, for everyone we lost." Megan turned to Nicole. "Captain, permission to speak freely?" "Granted. That was the craziest battle I've ever been in, and I never want to do it again." She smiled tiredly. "But I'm glad we won." News of the victory spread across the galaxy within hours. Every species with faster-than-light communication heard about it. The Velkari Empire, 10,000 years old, had been brought to its knees in a matter of weeks. President Claire Hoffman addressed the galaxy from Earth. Her message was broadcast on every frequency. 3,000 years ago, we agreed to peace because we value life, she said. We stayed within our boundaries and built a civilization focused on prosperity, not conquest. But when you murdered our people, when you broke the sacred treaty, you reminded us of something we never forgot. Humanity can be peaceful, but we can also be the most dangerous species in this galaxy. She paused, letting her words sink in. We demand complete Velkari withdrawal from all border regions. We demand reparations for New Terra. We demand the arrest of those responsible for starting this war. These are not negotiations. These are terms. On the Velkari homeworld, chaos erupted. Korthax had survived the battle but was immediately arrested by his own military. The old council members who had warned against war took control. They knew they had no choice but to accept humanity's demands. An old Velkari named Zarathon addressed her people. Our ancestors fought humans once. They learned respect through blood. We forgot that lesson. Now we've learned it again. We must sue for peace and pray humanity shows mercy. Admiral Cross received reports that other Velkari fleets were surrendering without a fight. The Empire was collapsing from within. Everyone realized the war was lost, but Cross knew this wasn't over. Winning battles was easy compared to building a lasting peace. He sent a message to President Hoffman. "We've won the war, Madam President. Now comes the hard part. What do we do with our victory?" The galaxy waited to see what humanity would do next. Would they conquer? Would they seek revenge? Or would they surprise everyone again? 3 months after the Battle of Beta Centauri, representatives from 30 alien species gathered at Unity Station. Humanity had built the massive space station specifically for the peace conference. It orbited a neutral star, halfway between human and Velkari space. The Velkari sent Zarathon, a former diplomat who had spent her life advocating for peace. She was old now, her scales gray with age. She walked into the conference hall knowing her species' survival depended on humanity's mercy. President Claire Hoffman sat at the head of the long table. Admiral Cross stood behind her, along with Ambassador Charles Wright. Captain Nicole Grant attended as a military advisor. Around the table sat representatives from species across the galaxy. Everyone wanted to see what would happen next. Claire stood to speak. The room fell silent. 3,000 years ago, our two civilizations nearly destroyed each other, she began. We agreed to peace because the alternative was extinction. For 3 millennia, we honored that agreement. We built our worlds. We raised our children. We hoped war would never return. She looked directly at Zarathon. Your emperor chose to break that peace. He murdered 3 million of our people. He thought we were weak because we chose not to fight. He learned, as your ancestors learned, that humanity remembers. We remember every wrong done to us. And we remember how to respond. Zarathon bowed her head. President Hoffman, I cannot defend what was done. Emperor Korthax and his supporters have been arrested. They will face justice. The Velkari people are ashamed of what happened. We beg for mercy. Charles Wright stood and pulled up a holographic display. It showed the terms humanity was demanding. The Velkari Empire will pay reparations to New Terra over 50 years, he announced. Financial support for rebuilding. Medical aid for the wounded. Support for orphans and displaced families. All military vessels will withdraw 500 light-years from human space, creating a buffer zone. Those responsible for ordering the attack will stand trial in an international court. The alien representatives whispered among themselves. The terms were harsh but not impossible. Many had expected humanity to demand complete surrender or occupation of Velkari worlds. Then Claire stood again. But we're not here just to punish. We're here to build something better. She gestured to Admiral Cross. He activated another holographic display. This one showed a different vision. Ships from multiple species working together. Shared technology. Cooperative defense. We proposed the formation of the Galactic Defense Coalition, Cross explained. A voluntary alliance of species committed to mutual defense. Any member species under attack will receive support from all others. We share technology, resources, and strategic planning. The room erupted in shocked conversation. Nicole leaned close to Ryan Pierce, who had accompanied her. They didn't expect this, she whispered. Why would they? Ryan replied. We just crushed the galaxy's strongest military. Everyone expected us to start conquering. Zarathon stood slowly. You defeated us completely. You could demand anything. Why offer alliance instead of domination? Claire smiled. Because we're human. Yes, we can fight. Yes, we can win wars. But we'd rather build than destroy. We'd rather have friends than subjects. 3,000 years ago, we learned that winning wars doesn't guarantee peace. Real security comes from cooperation. An alien representative from the Kresh Collective spoke up. His species was insectoid with multiple limbs and compound eyes. What do you gain from this coalition? What's the catch? Resources, Admiral Cross answered honestly. Rare minerals we don't have. Access to trade routes. Scientific knowledge. And most importantly, allies. The galaxy is big. There could be threats we haven't encountered yet. Species from beyond our region. Dangers we can't imagine. Together, we're stronger. Nicole stood to add her perspective. I fought in the war. I lost friends. Officer Pierce here lost his entire family to the Velkari attack. We have every reason to hate. But hate doesn't build a future. My ancestors fought for 3,000 years ago so their children wouldn't have to. I want the same for my children. The conference continued for 3 days. Species debated the proposal. Some were suspicious. Others were eager. But slowly consensus formed. The Velkari were first to join. Zarathon signed the agreement with shaking hands. We owe humanity a debt we can never fully repay, but we can try to earn forgiveness through cooperation. Within a week, 15 other species joined. Some joined because they genuinely believed in the vision. Others joined because they feared becoming humanity's next enemy. But the reason didn't matter as much as the result. The coalition was real. On New Terra, reconstruction began in earnest. Ships from 6 different species arrived with supplies and workers. The colony that nearly died became a symbol of the new era. Different species working together to rebuild what war had destroyed. A massive memorial was constructed on the northern continent, where 3 million people had died. Every name was inscribed in stone. Every language spoken in the coalition was represented. At the top, a simple inscription read, "They died because of hatred. We build because of hope." Nicole Grant was given command of the coalition's first joint task force. Her crew now included officers from multiple species. A Velkari tactical officer worked alongside Ryan Pierce. A creche pilot trained with Megan Lawson. The first few weeks were awkward. Ryan struggled to work with a Velkari officer. Every time he looked at the alien, he saw his dead family. But slowly, day by day, they learned to communicate. They learned to trust. One day, the Velkari officer, whose name was Krell, approached Ryan privately. "I know what your species suffered. What my species did, I cannot change the past, but I can work to ensure it never happens again." Ryan studied him for a long moment. Then he extended his hand. "That's all any of us can do. Try to be better than what came before." Admiral Cross retired 6 months after the war ended. At his retirement ceremony, he gave a speech that defined humanity's place in the galaxy. "We didn't want this war," he said. "We tried peace for 3,000 years. But when peace was broken, we remembered who we are. We are explorers and builders, scientists and artists. But when our people are threatened, we become protectors. We become warriors. That's not a threat to our friends. It's a promise." He looked out at the assembled officers. Human and alien faces stared back at him. Some species build empires through conquest. They take what they want and crush those who resist. That's not humanity's way. We build through cooperation. We grow through friendship. But make no mistake. If you harm our people, if you threaten our children, you will face the consequences. We gave the galaxy a choice. Peace or war. Most chose peace. I hope that choice never changes. The Sol barrier was officially dissolved. Human ships traveled freely across coalition space. Not as conquerors, but as partners. Human technology began spreading to other species. Medical advances. Agricultural techniques, clean energy systems. But humanity never forgot the lesson. Peace required strength, friendship required trust, and both required constant vigilance. In the classified archives on Earth, deep in a vault that few people knew existed, Admiral Cross left one final document. It contained designs for weapons even more powerful than the Helios array. Weapons that could crack planets. Weapons that could destroy stars. The document had a single note attached. "Pray we never need these, but if we do, remember what we fight for. Remember why we built them. Not for conquest. Not for revenge. For survival. For protection. For the future of all species who choose peace." 5 years after the war, the galaxy was different. The Velkari Empire had become a democratic federation. They still had military power, but it was now directed by councils instead of emperors. They became one of humanity's closest allies. Captain Nicole Grant, now Admiral Nicole Grant, commanded the Coalition's 7th Fleet. Her ships patrolled the outer regions, protecting against pirates and raiders. Ryan Pierce served as her second in command. The grief never fully left him, but he found purpose in protecting others from experiencing what he had. On Earth, children learned about the war in schools. They studied the battles. They memorized the names of the dead. But they also learned about the peace that followed. They learned that strength was worthless without wisdom. That victory meant nothing without mercy. President Claire Hoffman stood at the Unity Station, 5 years after its construction. She watched ships from 24 species docking at the station, trade vessels, science ships, cultural exchange programs. This was what they had fought for. Not domination, partnership, an aide approached her. "Madam President, the Velkari ambassador is here for your meeting." Claire nodded. Zarathon had become a friend over the years. They met regularly to discuss coalition business. The old Velkari had dedicated her remaining years to building bridges between their species. They sat in Claire's office, drinking tea from Earth and eating pastries from the Velkari homeworld. Small gestures, small connections, the kind of things that build lasting peace. Do you think it will last? Zarathon asked. This peace we've built? Claire considered the question. I think it will last as long as we remember why it matters, as long as we teach our children about the cost of war, as long as we choose cooperation over conquest. She looked out the window at the stars. Humanity proved we can win wars. Now we're proving we